Here we go. So again, welcome everyone. And I want to thank you for participating in this little interview. So welcome. And let me just again remind you of the questions. How did you get to this project, and what interested you about participating in this? And then kind of how have you been taking care of yourselves and handling being a creative person in the middle of a pandemic when we're all so locked away? So I'm just going to open up the floor and see what you want to say.
Thank you so much for letting us spout off a little bit. Playwrights usually are so behind the scenes, so it's fun to be a center stage.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
I understand that in the earlier conversation you had with the other half of the Playwrights, that two of them self-identified as coming from Playwrights Gallery, and Arden and I are also from Playwrights Gallery. And it was also Ginger Grace who told us about you and about the project. And some of us had written plays on the pandemic theme. What a surprise. So I sent you a piece of a play that is in several, that's made up of several short plays that I was calling the COVID Diaries. Now I found out there's something else called the COVID Diaries New York City. So there goes that title. But this play, COVID Hits the Hamptons, was along with a play of Jenny Lynn Bader's, was and another playwright named Glenda Frank. The three plays were published in Plays International Europe in the fall. So they were, they'd been worked over a little bit. So I was ready to send that off. But I saw a little clip about people in the Hamptons grabbing up all the caviar and the expensive steaks and the expensive wines to get ready for the lockdown. And I thought that would be a funny subject, and sure enough, it turned out to be.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, it's a wonderful piece, and I'm so glad, because as you know, doing something like this, we had so many responses. I was actually quite surprised by how many people responded. We probably had 4 hours worth that came our way, about 30 different pieces, and we had to narrow it down. We were looking for about a 90-minute show. It's probably going to run more like 110. But nine playwrights, 9 pieces, 19 actors, 3 directors. It's been being a project manager more than anything. It's been very interesting. But it's about choosing a mix of funny and what I think of as sort of straightforward, and then of course more serious, dramatic pieces. Because nobody wants to be 110 minutes later crying in their teacups for the rest of the day. So we try to mix it up a little bit. And I really enjoyed it. And I'm happy to talk a little bit more about how we went about with some of these, but let's hear from some other folks.
Well, I think this was a very clever and timely thing to do here. And actually, you told me about it. You wrote me an email asking if I would like to contribute a short play or the monologues. And I chose monologues because I wanted a new challenge, because I've only written monologues for some screenplays I wrote. And I also love the idea of participating with other writers. I just think that this was a great idea, and I was thrilled to be a part of it. It's great, Ned. It's wonderful. So it's very exciting. And it came together so fast and so easily, and wow.
Yeah, I'm still rocking from that myself. This is Kezia. Do you know these folks at all?
No, we don't know each other.
Okay.
Nice to meet.
No.
Hi, Kezia.
Hi.
Yeah. Kezia, I had the pleasure of working with Kezia in 2019. Do you know June Rachelson Ospa? Some of you?
Yes.
Maybe? Yeah. Well, Kezia was the composer for June's musical, The Hotel Belclair. And we premiered that at Outcast in November of 2019. And so that's how I got to know Kezia. And both Kezia and June came out and stayed with us for a week, maybe?
5 days or
5 days, yeah. And we had quite a wonderful time. Come to my little corner of the world here.
I wish
All the
we
way
could all
from
go
Israel.
out there.
Hey, I'm always
it's
welcoming
beautiful.
folks. We try when we bring in new work, we try to get the playwrights out, and we try to keep you in style, entertain you, put you up in a nice place. But yeah, that's how I got to know Kezia, and so I knew she'd been working on other stuff, and you're in Tel Aviv right now.
Yes.
Yeah, so this is our long distance person.
Yes, it's 10 hours difference.
Yeah.
So when the show goes on Friday night, I'll be up at 4:30 in the morning to make sure I'm here at 5. I'll be doing that for every show that starts at that hour. I don't care.
I
have
give
to
you
be
lots
part
of
of it.
credit.
I have to be part of every second of it.
Okay, well, good. I applaud you because 5 a.m. is not my best time of the day.
Not mine neither. I don't care. I'll watch the sunrise. I'll be great.
Okay.
I'm excited. I'm very excited.
And Kezia wrote a wonderful. It's actually like a monologue series. There are six characters interconnected, and their monologues are interconnected. It's quite a wonderful piece.
Thank you.
Well, I became intrigued when June, funny you should mention June, told me about this festival. We're both members of the League of Professional Theater Women, and we were both at a meeting, a Zoom meeting, where I was doing one of my monologues. And after that, she said, I have this friend, Ned. We've got to be in his festival. So I'm so excited, and I jumped at it. And thank you, June, if you're listening. Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you, Ned. But what intrigued me about the topic was I noticed during the pandemic that the range of reactions varied so much from I believe it, I'm going to obey all the CDC guidelines, I see people dying, and it ranged to, this is a hoax, I'm never wearing a mask. And that fascinated me because at the beginning, they were calling this an invisible enemy. And I started to become more and more afraid to even go outside. And I live across the street from a harbor here in New York. And I remember as a kid, the movie Godzilla, that Godzilla would raise his ugly head out of Tokyo Bay. And I thought of COVID like that. That is, there's something horrible waiting for me as soon as I leave my apartment. And that's what gave me the idea for Waiting for Godzilla. And I thought it would be fun to do sort of a surrealistic 21st century version of Waiting for Godot, where you have two men who are waiting for something, but they're not sure what.
Right. It's funny you say that because that's exactly what came to mind when I read it, was Godot. I kept thinking, boy, this is a surreal kind of Godot-like play with a somewhat more interesting undercurrent. And I love the metaphors in it. It's just, and every once in a while you just drop in a word that filters through the language we've been hearing for the past year. So it's, and the actors that I worked with on this, I think they really got it.
I hope so, because I deliberately never mentioned the words COVID or pandemic, because I wanted to be broader than that so that it would be open to interpretation. It could be people who are afraid of some political ugly thing rearing its head, or an economic thing, or a social thing. But I was also interested in the psychological and social damage, permanent damage that pandemic might be having on people, of what the quarantine might be having on people. And my characters are affected in different ways.
Right. Well, and definitely, I mean, what we know when we listen to the news is that there is a lot of trauma related to COVID. Not only for the folks who have been directly affected, as in being sick or having a loved one die, but everybody has some reaction to this in some way. Mm-hmm. I love the psychological element of that. Part of that is probably because the rest of my life outside of theater is that I'm a counseling psychologist. So.
Oh, good.
I work with trauma a lot.
Well, I just found myself becoming more and more afraid of even leaving the house, and I started staring at the harbor outside and wondering, is there something horrible waiting for me
Yeah.
as soon as I leave? And so that's how it started. That's how the idea started.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Again, one of the more serious pieces in the show.
Okay.
No, in a good way. That's what I wanted. I wanted a nice little mix.
Oh, I'm glad. Usually I write a lot of comedies, so this was a little different for me.
Right.
I try to add some elements of humor in it between the men, but basically it's what I was feeling at the time.
Well, and that touches a little bit on that second question, as like how, not, and Arden, I want to hear what you have to say as well, but I'm just going to throw this in, is that, as creative people, we find different ways to deal with things like this. How do we deal with a situation where we're suddenly, not only is the profession that you're involved in, theaters are shut down, so what are you doing? The contact that we're used to of being with people, whether you're at a meeting or whether you're at a table read or wherever you are at. I mean, just this isolation, the sense of isolation. I mean, can you imagine if Zoom wasn't around, how it would feel? It would be even worse, right? But I'm a real believer that artists of all sorts use their art therapeutically, even if they don't know it. And I'm just curious whether that seems to make sense to you all.
Well, I'm grateful that that so many theater companies have been doing Zoom and have been soliciting manuscripts, because without that, I don't know what I would be doing. I have friends who are not writers, and they are losing sleep. They don't feel well. They're depressed. They have nothing to do. I'm busy. I have plenty to do. Thank God for theater companies like yours. I'm sorry, Arden, I jumped in.
I think my first reaction after getting locked into my house was I was in shock for a while. I had been gallivanting all over the place as usual. I happened to live in Philadelphia, and I was going up to Playwrights Gallery to meet with my writers group, and I was traveling and I was doing all the things I do. And then all of a sudden I wasn't. And I found myself kind of stunned. It's sort of the same kind of stunned that happened after 2016. Just shocked. I didn't have a word. And that's weird for me, as anyone who knows me would say. So it took a while. And then I started processing, as you say, I guess, by writing, because that's what I do. So I put together a series. I realized after a little while that I had a series developing of plays about the pandemic. And I did a staged reading one night, and it was so edifying. It was so satisfying and delightful to be in that conversation, and for whatever it was, some kind of production and contact, that I was beyond thrilled when Ginger mentioned that you were doing this. And Ginger was in that series. And it was just delightful to be invited to participate in something. And the piece that we're talking about really is one of those instances of processing what happens when you lock people into a house or a small space or a big space, but you change the dynamic of their relationship so radically. And all of the pieces that I was working on kind of dealt with the effects of the emotional effects. I figure there are people better equipped than I to deal with the sociological effects and all the other things that come along with it. It's not like I'm not following it 32 hours a day on my iPad, but I figure there are others to chronicle that. So I look more at the human effects. And I kept hearing snippets of stories that otherwise would sound completely surreal. Mm-hmm. So the piece that I wrote really has to do with what happens to a long-term relationship that's about to unravel when you say, well, you can't split up. And I was thrilled in the first incarnation that I was able to work with a married couple. For me, that was part of the exercise, was putting two married actors in a room together and saying, okay, here's your script, have fun, and letting them sort of work out the stuff that they had built up over the several, at that point, it was November.
Okay.
And we'd already been locked in for a good while. And I thought, well, that should add a nice element. And I was so happy when you said that you were working with a married couple again, because I really think from the first time that we read it at Playwrights Gallery, and a married couple read it. And I thought, that's hilarious. They have all of these cues and subtexts and things going on. I don't even have to finish the sentences. I just have to set up the joke. And, away they go, because they've been working on this same conversation for 20 or 30 years. So there was kind of even an echo for me of the kinds of conversations that take place in Beckett and Pinter and things. It's sillier and funnier, but it's not really funny. It's not funny when it's happening to you and your whole life is at stake.
Right.
So
yeah, and particularly, I was gonna say, particularly when the setup is that they were getting ready to divorce anyway, and they're stuck together because of the pandemic. This is like, it's a whole nother layer.
Yeah, it's completely intolerable, under any other circumstances. And yet, in the end, and I'm not going to give away the play, and yet. So you never know what's going to happen under pressure. And I always love the idea of intolerable circumstances. A lot of those plays deal with, and lots of my work, I think, probably deals with, what do we do now?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I'm very thrilled that it's being done again, and that people will have a chance maybe to recognize some of their own frustration and sense of shock at what's happened to our lives. Because sometimes it's so big, it seems so big that we can't take it in. And then it becomes our new reality, and we can't really stop every day to what we're doing to imagine or to analyze just how big a shift this is. Mm-hmm. We just know we adapt in this strange way, and we just know this is our life now. But what kind of life is this?
Right. Yeah, and I mean, this is what it is. They talk about this as a 1 in 100-year event, right? So it's not like any of us have lived through it before.
Never was the phrase "misery loves company" more apt. We all agree on that.
It's amazing. It's just every single thing that seems so normal, rudimentary, elemental about life is changed. Everything.
Yeah.
Yes.
I
try to approach everything with a sense of humor.
Absurd is our friend.
Well, if you don't have that, what's left?
Yes, that's
true. I would say one thing, which I think is that artists, yes, I think we got sort of slapped down at the beginning because we empathize, we take things in, and we let things get to us. But I would say we are better equipped and more resilient in many ways than other people who are not used to sitting in their room pondering the imponderables by themselves for days on end, or not being able to go out because they have a reading coming up and they have to finish a rewrite, and they can't talk to anybody, and they can't go anywhere, and they can't do that anyway because you can't do that while you're writing. You have to not be social. So I think in many ways, in a very strange and ironic way, we're used to not having a reliable maybe source of income or schedule in many ways, and we're more used to certain kinds of hardships, and we have to be adaptable all the time because our lives are that fluid sort of experience.
Right.
That's a good point. Maybe writers have the tools to handle a pandemic more than other people do. That's a good point, Arden.
Sometimes.
I will say it hasn't necessarily been good for my finishing ability, because I have started several full-length plays, and I get to about page 30 or so, and I think, who's interested in this? Where is this going? So it hasn't inspired, that part of it hasn't been inspiring.
So
But
maybe,
I've been able to finish short plays because I have a short attention span in these times, I think.
well, maybe when we get back to whatever the new normal is, because I suspect it's never going to go back to the way it was. It's going to be just by the nature of everything we've been through, we're going to have a new perspective on life, right? So, but maybe when we get back to that, whatever that is, that's going to be the time suddenly all your endings will happen.
Your mouth to God's ears. I will hope for that.
Anything else that people want to say about yourself, your work during the pandemic, or this particular project?
I had an unusual thought the other day that was that it took me a very long time to get my legs under me again and start writing. But the other day I was sitting there and I've been working on musicals. Musicals are endless. Musicals are frustrating. Musicals, there's little to recommend the experience, I think, unless, you know, you're Andrew Lloyd Webber, which I'm not. So the fact that I was here I couldn't really distract myself in any other way. And I've been hoping I would write a play, just a straight play again for the last several years. But these musicals require all this development time and schmoozing and all this stuff. And then I didn't have any more excuses. A few months ago, I started bringing something into gallery. And the other day I thought, oh my gosh, that's 3 days in a row that I went in here and I worked for a few hours on a play. Because I had run out of things to distract myself with. There's absolutely nothing else I can do. You know, I can take more walks, that's all, or bike rides.
Right, right.
So in that way, it was kind of an interesting revelation that I was actually doing what I was supposed to be doing for once.
Right. It's like an inverse motivator.
Yeah.
The first 2-3 months of the pandemic, I was like paralyzed. I just was kind of waiting for it to end. They kept saying by the late spring, it's going to end. So I'm waiting for the late spring and it's not ending. And I thought to myself, that's it. I'm going to start projects. So I started making videos. I sent you that video I worked on for a while.
Yep.
Working on my second musical, finishing up my second play. I just went full speed ahead because I felt like I lost precious time. And suddenly I realized this is not going to end anytime soon, this pandemic. So this helped me so much. I just cleared my head that I have to sit down and work, and I'm fine now. I'm actually fine. I go for my power walks every day and I come home and write, or what do I create. And this has helped me enormously to cope with lockdowns, which we are maybe heading for our 4th lockdown soon. Just everything. It's been, you know, it's been hard for everyone. So I think that creating just takes away the pain of it. So it's helped me a lot in dealing with this, like I said, with humor and taking these terrible things that are happening and trying to put them in the context of humor. And that's why I prefer to write humor. I prefer to laugh. I prefer to make other people laugh. And all of this is getting me through this period much better than the first few months. So
I'm with you, Kezia. For a while, I couldn't even read. I thought, well, at least I'll get through a few things. It took me like all summer to read Mirror and the Light, you know, which is a fat book, but I mean, I wasn't reading. But in August, I saw some outdoor readings with microphones, with everybody masked except for the actors, and that was an inspiring moment. That was kind of a big turnaround for me. I thought, this life goes on. This can happen. There can still be some theater, and that was very happy. And this year they're recruiting for plays, and the producer said, I never thought I would be glad to say that we are looking forward to gathering on the library lawn, but that's what we're doing.
This is such a great idea, Ned, what you're doing. You're going to I guess you'll be continuing with Zoom projects and all kinds of things. It's wonderful. It's just keeping the theater going
Yeah,
in a different format.
for the time being,
Great.
this is what we're gonna try to do. I mean, it's the great unknown, right? When
Yeah.
do we get to be back in the theater? And we're a small space. So the idea of, putting 25% of a patron base in there is not tenable. I mean, we could not afford,
Yeah.
we'd be spending more money to produce something than we could ever make. So
Yes.
right now I'm just wanting to make sure that we can keep paying our rent. But and I've heard the theme I've heard not only today, but the other day and with other folks is the first 2 or 3 months were the tough ones. It's like when everybody kind of, I know for me, it was like put my head in the sand, pretend it's not happening. And I mean, lucky enough that I actually had my university job to keep me busy, but we converted, and so all my teaching has been on Zoom for a year, which was quite a transition because I like the in-person piece of things. I missed that part of it, although I've definitely learned how to use Zoom. I will say I'm a master at Zoom now. And it's my last year. I'm retiring at the end of June, so it's a very interesting transition to have not been on campus for a year, to be working from home, teaching from home, and then watching the theater have to be shut down has just been painful. But it was like after the first 2 or 3 months, suddenly I was kind of seeing what other folks were doing, and this whole idea of online virtual theater started being intriguing. And again, it's never going to replace live theater. There's just something that will never be replaced. But I'm intrigued now to think, oh, so how can we, even when the pandemic is over, is there a way that something like this can still be a part of what we do? I don't know what that means yet. I feel like I'm in the middle of it, but I'm kind of excited by the idea that there may be aspects of this that actually can be a new and interesting way to present material, and particularly, to widen an audience or to get people involved who don't all live where you live. It's sort of widening your creatives, and it's widening your patrons.
Well, Zoom theater can become a new genre.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know that anybody's figured out exactly how to do it yet, but there's certainly a lot of attention to trying different things, and I'm hoping this will be one of those different things. And definitely, the way we have done this production is, we did a very intense rehearsal period, all virtually. But then some of the plays were literally written for Zoom, so we recorded it on Zoom. And some of them we brought into the theater but we used a green screen, and we filmed it against a virtual backdrop so there's some consistency across the pieces. So it's kind of an interesting mix of how this is all being filmed, and yet I still wanted to have some kind of a consistent look to the whole piece. And I'm curious. I don't know whether it's going to be. Who knows how it's going to be? It's as much of a mystery to me right now as anybody else. But I feel pretty good about it. I feel like we've had people who are really, really excited to work. I know all the actors were just like thrilled to do something. We did wind up using a fair number of folks who already were in their own little bubbles. So I know for Arden, for yours, Deborah, for yours, they're both married couples that are actors. So, in fact, yours, Deborah, they filmed in their house. So all the scenes are filmed in their house because the man who's Jim Carroll, who's the actor, is also a filmmaker. So he was able to do that with the help of our tech person. And then Sherry, yours, actually, we didn't use the green screen. I just used a black stage with chairs because it seemed to call for that.
That's what I wanted. Thank you. Thank you.
So it's an interesting mix that we're going to get.
Do you think that? Sorry.
No, I was going to say, Kezia, yours felt so much like a documentary to me in some weird way that I actually did that. I just filmed against a black background.
Okay, I know that you did in the theater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
all but
Um,
one. I have one
Okay.
actor who was really immunocompromised, and so we did record his on Zoom, but with the same background.
Okay. Um, how was it filming in the theater, you know, in this time of COVID? Was it,
Yeah,
I mean, were there many people there
no,
filming or just you and the actor or
it
actors and
was it was me and Alex, who is our,
yes.
generally speaking, he's our resident lighting designer, but he pivoted during all of this and has
Okay.
done all the technology stuff. So he actually has been working steadily for the past year, doing Zoom and filming for different theaters and communities, and he's done a couple of cooking shows and things like that he works for. So he actually, we invested in a lot of the equipment
Yes.
as a theater, and so it was Alex and I, and he's already in my bubble. So it's just the two of us, and then
Okay.
we brought in the actors one at a time, or with the couples, they were already a couple, so we brought them in together.
I'm curious about something. When the theater comes back to life, would you be interested in having shows in the theater and also doing separate shows for Zoom like this?
Yeah, I mean, I
I
think
mean,
when
you'll record them, you'll have a show that you might not want to put in the theater, but you might think it's good for, you know, for
Zoom.
streamlining.
Right.
So would you consider that?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean,
Okay.
I think part of it is going to be to see how playwrights and those who own the rights, the agents and everyone else. Like I think about dramatists and Samuel French and you know, those folks have found their unique way to keep making their money, which I understand completely. But you know, suddenly there was like, oh yes, we'll be open to allowing some of our things to be streamed, but you have to use our streaming service and you have to pay us to do that, and it adds a whole lot of money that, you know, more independent, smaller theaters don't necessarily have. So I've been, you know, I'm needing to rely more on folks who are willing to work with us around a new piece, for example, like this.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, again, I'm kind of open to the idea of what might we be able to do as a part of what we do, not to shift our mission, not to change doing the in-person theater that we do, but add on in some way.
And would it also be to your advantage if you put a show in, put a show in the theater, and then when the run is over, that you put it on streamlining? I mean, I know you did that, but is it to your advantage financially, or is it, does it do anything, or is it one, just keep it one place, or put it in another, streamlining or theater?
You know, that's a good question. I don't know that I have an answer for that. I can see where it potentially, for a limited run in streaming, it could be an interesting way to expand a viewership and to make more money for the playwright and for the theater. But it would definitely be something that would have to be a contracted agreement that everybody would agree to. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason we were able to stream in the summer and fall of 2020 was because all of the things that we streamed had been shows that we had premiered or done stage readings of and had permission.
Yes.
But we limited it to just 2 performances. But it was a way to help make a little bit of money.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought that what the National Theatre did in London was amazing.
Right.
They were so smart and people were so hungry for the content, I thought. You know, obviously they have a lot of clout, and I'm sure they, you know, when they decide they want to use something to stream, people are only too happy because of the reach that they have.
Right.
But it really seemed to offer another possible dimension, because even when you can travel, you can't necessarily travel to London.
Right. Right. Well, and the Irish.
And the Irish
They-
Rep or Trinity.
Yeah, they did an amazing job early on.
Yeah,
and of course, I figure they've got the budgets.
yeah, but you know, it's interesting. You could do themed sort of stuff, seasonal stuff, or themed stuff. That's not. I mean, every theater has their musical that they do around the holidays and that kind of thing, or a comedy, and it does kind of offer another opportunity, I guess.
Right.
you know, for family viewing or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, June and I have chatted. We email and chat a lot. And we've both kind of come to this idea of at least once a year doing sort of a short play festival on a theme. That's not a brand new idea. Lots of places do that, but we were thinking about it more in terms of that's one possibility to do something that could be an online event. Because we've actually talked about the next theme possibly being around mental illness.
Sorry, how fitting.
I know,
feel very well equipped.
As I said that, it's just like, yeah.
I've been doing research for a year.
Well, after a year of a pandemic, I don't think it's going to be a big stretch. So,
Nope, I'm ready.
yeah. Well, you know, we'll have to come up with some other themes too. I mean, not everything has to be heavy duty. Yeah, anyway, anything else that anybody wants to add to this mix before I let you all go?
Do you have a monitor in your theater so you could show these kinds of conversations to your audience, you know, coming in and going out of the theater?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have a way of doing that, either having it recorded and then showing it, because we do have a projector that we use for some of the plays that we do. But again, you know, it's all about, when I raise some more money, you know, investing in some more equipment that could do some new interesting things. Absolutely. We've been doing these Playwright interviews for the last, when we were doing some of the streaming things we did of productions previously done on stage, and our audiences have really liked it. In fact, I should mention, there was a suggestion by one of the playwrights that we were chatting with on Monday about doing a talkback. And of course, you know, we do talkbacks in the theater, but for some reason, doing this project, like talkbacks was completely not even in my brain. I kept thinking, I mean, I don't know why I wasn't thinking about that, but we've decided to do 2 talkbacks after our 2 Sunday, on the West Coast, Sunday matinees.
Sounds good.
All right, well, listen, I want to thank you so much for joining me today and talking a little bit with me. I know that our patrons will love this, and I certainly appreciate it. And it's really nice to see you all and not just be talking to an email.
Nice to meet you.
All right.
And it was a pleasure, and thank you for being a theater that does new plays.
Thank you.
Thank you for everything.
That's part of our mission, is we want to.
You're our muse. You are our muse. You know that?
Well, I'm something.
My
that's
muse.
for sure. Well, thank you, and I do hope that beyond this, I'll get to see you all again at some point, and maybe get to do some of your work.
I would like
Uh,
that.
I want to go to Whitby.
Yes, come out and visit.
Yes.
Absolutely. All right.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you, Ned.
Everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Have a good day.
Bye.